Hi, and welcome to Archery Ops Podcast, brought to you by Gold Tip Arrows and Bee Stinger Stabilizers. On each episode, we talk to top experts in archery and bow hunting about what it takes to shoot better and hunt better, target after target, hunt after hunt, shot after shot. I'm your host, Tim Gillingham. Let's roll. Well, first of all, I just want to welcome you to the Archery Ops Podcast. It's a new podcast by Gold Tip, and we just wanted to bring people on that had a wide, diverse skill sets. You guys are known for your hunting, and your dad, has kind of put together a platform that showcases, your guys' growth into bow hunting and archery, and some of the challenges therein. And I looked over some of your stuff on your website, and I thought it was a good topic that we could go over, discussing whitetail bow hunting. I've lived out west my whole life. I've lived out here in Utah and Wyoming and Alaska my whole life. So sometimes I envy you guys, as I get older, because you get to go out and sit in a tree stand in the afternoon and hunt. And here it's just like it's an act of Congress to go hunting. I mean, it really takes a lot of effort. I just come off of a 13-day hunt on the Pavant, and it was just it's a killer, man. I lost 13 pounds.
Are you in Utah now?
I'm in Utah now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Great Falls,
Montana. Yeah. I seen your phone number was Montana.
So. Yeah. So I grew up there through junior year of high school before we moved to Iowa. So definitely my heart still lays with elk though. I mean, I like whitetails, but elk are just like a big bugling bull.
I hunt with I've hunted Montana. I actually got a deer tag and an antelope tag in Montana still. So I may jump on a plane and hunt up there with my buddy Yossity Perkins Killer. That guy, man, he kills some big elk every year. I killed one up there, 360 bull a couple years ago, 6x7 or 7x8. And he's crazy. It's just so fun when you get a chance to hunt some private ground on, down along those rivers and stuff. It's just.
Is that near the breaks?
He's in Bernie. You know where that's at?
I don't think so, actually.
It's north of Sheridan. It's the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
Yeah. Southwestern or southeastern. I'm sorry. So
kind of by Billings.
South of Billings. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Those bulls there for some reason seem to get crazy big.
Big bulls in there. Yeah. Yeah. Rob Morgan that owns Superior Archery there. They killed 2 big bulls again this year. So.
Right.
And they killed 2 last year that were just stompers. So yeah, it's getting harder to draw for a non-resident. And, that's kind of tie into one of our topics we talk about today. I'm going to kind of just preface it, but it's introducing kids and hunters to the outdoor lifestyle. It can be difficult out west, because it's hard to get a tag, but, I think we want to keep this kind of structured, keep it down to about an hour. And I think I want to start with kind of, a topic, I guess that, if you're a whitetail bow hunter, there's a lot of people out there getting into the sport and, that maybe don't know that are going to listen to this podcast. And there's things that I didn't know. I mean, I went coos deer hunting with Ray Bunny in Mexico about 4 years ago, and I got in a ground blind and there were some issues popped up that I'd never expected. I couldn't see my pins in the ground blind. So, when you guys whitetail bow hunt, what's your preference? I mean, is it ground blind or is it a tree stand, and or do you use both?
Both. There's certain situations where we'll get into and we really don't have an opportunity to be able to get in a stand that would need a blind, and that's great when we have those opportunities, because then we can still hunt them, So sometimes we're going to go down to a food source or into a waterway or something. There's really no way to get a stand to it. If I have my preference, I'm in a stand all the time. I just, unless it's really cold, then I'm a bit of a weenie, and I'd rather just sit in a blind.
No doubt. What's your thoughts on, because when we were down there in Mexico, we were running Ozonics on a ground blind, and I swear, I mean, we had deer come in downwind and it seemed like it was working, so I'd be what's your thoughts on that?
I think that Ozonics would be your best chance. I've had a few where I think that the newer units put out so much ozone that it may be overwhelming to the deer, and it kind of alarms them. I had a deer I was trying to kill a few years ago that and maybe that's what I did wrong, is I had two ozonics units and everything in the blind because
Yeah.
he was kept following this doe. And so if the doe could get past me, then I could shoot the buck, right?
Right.
And I just couldn't get the doe past me. She kept hitting my wind. Well, I figured, I did everything I could, scent control, ozonics, the works, and that stupid doe still pecked me.
Yeah.
So ever
That's
since then, I've focused on the wind, and I wear Old Spice in the stand. I just said I'm just going to focus on the wind.
a interesting conversation I had with a guy that's pretty good bow hunter. Jesse Moorhead.
The name rings a bell. Yeah.
Jesse and Ginger Moorhead, they've been around. They ran around with Muzzy. They were big promoters of Muzzy forever. But Jesse always used to build a fire out of green leaves, and he would smoke himself every morning. And he said, they'll smell it, but they don't just freak out, because it's a. But I don't know. That seems a little crazy to me. But
I I've heard that a bunch of times, and one, more power to him because I'm not going to douse myself in smoke and have to smell that the entire time. But
yeah,
two, the thing I have a hard time grasping on that is if you think of dogs, deer, their nose works the same way. They smell in layers. So really they can smell your individual scent and they can smell the smoke. So to me, he probably just smells like a barbecue Jeff. You know what I'm saying? Because you
or
have
maybe
different.
maybe it smells like he's further away or something, not as big of a threat.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing I would wonder is I would think they would associate fire with danger. So to me, I wouldn't try it, but it
Yeah, I don't
could
know.
work.
I would think is like I had a guy I used to work with, Ben Breddington. And I see him post some stuff. I think he works for Onyx now, but he used to work for Primos, and he was my production manager. So, but he's into bird hunting, and so the birds smell, or the dogs smell the bird's breath. And I wonder if you did do something like that, if you'd have to go, full face mask. I remember reading an article in Bugle magazine years ago about this guy. He would sneak into a herd of elk, and this guy was psycho, man. He would douse this cloth with elk piss and put it over his face. I'm like, man, I ain't doing that.
Over his face?
Over his face, yeah, because that's the only, because they were smelling your breath.
How do you
Uh,
not whirl?
oh, I'd vomit.
I would throw up. I
But
couldn't do
it's
that.
funny what people will do. I mean, but yeah, I mean, if I always said like this last elk hunt, I mean, if they couldn't smell you, they wouldn't have a chance. But
Oh, it's
that's when, I always laugh about this. Everybody talks about the innovation in guns and muzzle loaders, and they try to, like, whenever you bash them about, I got buddy build muzzle loaders. He was thinking about going to King of 2 Mile with a muzzle loader.
that's
I mean,
insane.
they're legitimately shooting half-minute groups at 600 yards with muzzle loaders now, and it's like it's basically a rifle. I mean, you can plug a guy into an 800-yard rifle like that right now, with a
Right.
phone program or a Kestrel. I mean, it doesn't take that much to learn how to shoot that accurate at distance anymore. But then those guys try to compare that to the innovations in bow hunting, and I like to think I'm at the top of the food chain of archery knowledge, and yet I still didn't get an arrow op in 13 days.
Right.
I mean, it was crazy. I mean, it's just the biggest problem with bow hunting is you're so close, that they smell you, they sense you. I just met with a buddy, Dave Stepp, just killed a big 380 bull in Arizona. And Dave's a hell of a hunter. He has a big background in 3D archery, but they followed this big bull, and he just smart enough to let him sit and not go in after him, because this bull just come off the herd by himself, because an old bull, right? And that bull came out at 8 yards, and he said he didn't see us, he just sensed us. And he said he made the comment, he said, I wonder if that stuff that Mike Slinkard sells, what do they call those
Hex.
hex suits, I wonder if they just sense the if that really truly has some merit in that situation when you're really super close like that.
I would think it would some that electromagnetic field. It's just like we can feel
Yeah.
people staring at you.
Uh,
There's got to be some, especially when everything is trying to eat you. I would think that there's got to be some
yeah,
sense.
it's got to be something to this because I swear to God, there's been many times at tournaments I'll be like, man, that guy's shooting really freaking good. And I kid somebody, hey, have you watched so and so? And then all of a sudden the guy misses. It's like, I cursed him.
Yeah,
I got to perfect
yeah.
that.
Are you mostly calling to elk, or are you just trying to spot
You
and
know,
stalk?
I did. I am not a great caller, and I don't think you can call really big bulls off cows very well. So I tend to locate and move on them.
Right.
Sometimes, I'm a little too aggressive. I think, I mean, it's like you never know what to do in certain situations. You try to play it. If you're solo, like I was, I had a guy that wanted to film it, so he was right on my left shoulder all the time. So I didn't really have a guy behind me. I think the biggest key to elk hunting and calling him in is you need two or three, two, at least one to two callers back, and so you can keep the elk fired up, and the other guy can slip in, or you know, or they call them by you, where you don't because they know exactly where that sound come from.
Right.
I use
Okay.
I use decoys a lot too.
Yep.
Um, I love the Ultimate Predator decoys. I shot my mountain goat with it 3 or 4 years ago. I shot a mule deer last year with it in Nebraska. It was a cool like an 8-10 yard shot. I mean, it was pretty neat to use it and just see the deer's reaction when he saw it. And
Are you
but
kind of using that as a cover, or are you using that as your strategy to get close to them?
both,
Both.
both, and I use it to give me a little bit more time to range and to also give me some cover for movement. When I'm really close.
Yeah.
But yeah, I shot a coyote the same way. I put a grunt call in my mouth. I had this coyote behind a yucca bedded down, and I just because I'd screwed up a mule deer, so I put the full draw and put the grunt call in my mouth and hit the grunt call. He pops up and he sees that decoy, turns around, looks at it, and gets hammered. But
Right. Yeah, I think decoys are way underutilized, especially for
yeah,
elk.
I mean for elk especially, I think I had a bull like the last hour, pretty nice 320 bull. Had him for probably 4 to 5 minutes at 15 yards. I could not get a freaking shot. He'd just sit there looking at me, and I could see the top of his head. And then I finally, after about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, that I said, my decoy's on my backpack. I kind of stripped my backpack off, pulled the decoy out, and I Velcro it. Took total cluster. I mean, I Velcro kept getting stuck, and finally I get it on there, and I pop it up where he could see it, and then I hit my cow call again, and that kind of enticed him a little bit more, where he got up a little higher and moved. And so I tried to circle around on him, and he kind of spooked off a little bit, and he gave me one shot through a hole about that big at about 50, and I just kind of pulled my head the last second to gauge the yardage again, and it's all it took. He's gone.
Right. Yeah, elk seem to have an extra element of luck to them. They
Ah,
manage to get away with it.
and they know how to stop right behind a freaking bush or a cedar tree, and then they
Mhm.
directly away. I think I've seen whitetails and deer do that stuff too, but
Yeah,
um,
elk are really good at it.
so yeah, kind of what you're saying on ground blinds. I think one of the big things that I've learned in ground blinds is it lets you get away with more movement. Um, you do need to darken it up pretty good inside, but I like,
Yeah.
in your opinion, I like vertical slits in my blind, vertical holes. I'm
Yes.
I'm a big guy. I'm 6'6", and I've sat in some ground blinds that were pretty sketchy to try to get a shot off inside. And
Are you are you shooting out of the chair, or do
yeah,
you kneel?
I
Yeah.
mean, I did whatever with what I needed based on because most of the time I'm with other people. It's their ground blinds, but I've had the option to shoot out of blinds that are windows like this, and then windows that are vertical. And I think
Yeah.
I tend to like the vertical slits. You know,
Yeah.
number one, you can
Yeah.
block
I
out
agree.
more. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
I love blinds. I think they give you a huge advantage as far as being able, mostly for us, it's areas that we can't hunt, out of a stand or that we need it. And a lot of times too, it's based on the wind where we can't get into the timber with them, but we can get out in food source and have something with a blind to be able to utilize them. But I agree, vertical windows seems to make it a lot easier. We also take like a blanket and put it down in the floor, and that just seems, especially if you're on leaves or corn or anything else, it makes it a little more quiet. And
yeah,
for sure, you can get away with a lot more movement in there. Really good for taking other people.
right. My wife's first antelope, we had this guy built buddy of mine built these blinds. He built them out of 4 pieces of plywood with some hog fence. I had 5 people in that blind. My wife, my wife's mother, my wife's father, my daughter at the time. She was my stepdaughter. She was like 7. None of them had ever been hunting. And it was
Right.
and then me and they're trying to coach her through her first animal and video at the same time. It was pretty fun, but it allows for that type of experience too. But you normally run lighted pins inside of a blind? Because that's one of the things that I found big time. I couldn't see my pins at all.
Yeah. So I haven't had much of an issue. Um, Now my fiance, typically we even turn them on as soon as we get in there, just because she has a little bit harder time seeing the pins. But I don't really have too much of an issue seeing my pins unless we get where it's really getting in the last 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But I can't even tell you the last buck that I shot out of a ground blind. They've almost all been out of stands, so I really
Okay.
haven't faced that issue too much. Yep.
What's your favorite kind of stand?
Honestly, I've been doing the whole saddle thing. I
Oh,
swore I would never be that guy, and I would never go and be in a saddle all the time. And
really?
and I killed my biggest deer ever last year doing the saddle hunting thing. So
I did
it
I
just
did yeah.
depends.
I did that in Kansas last year. I've got this thing called a Guido's tree harness. You ever seen it?
Uh-uh.
It's kind of a saddle.
Guido's tree. I don't know that I want to see that.
No, it's a saddle, but it's got a flat bottom in it, and it's work. You flip
Okay.
it. It just work. You flip it up like a backpack. It actually works pretty
Yeah.
good. It's just those trees down in Kansas are not straight, and they're just
Yeah.
it is freaking nightmare. The first time I ever used it, I'm I really learned a lesson that I was looking around trying to find. You use a step on the bottom, or do you use actually screw in steps to move around a tree?
No, yeah, I use the steps and then a platform.
A platform.
So
Okay.
I'll have a little platform that's probably, I don't know, it's probably like 12 by 12 or something like that.
Yeah, I see
Um,
guys using those. I think that's the key to it.
oh yeah, that gives you way more freedom and gives you the ability to, one, it's a lot more comfortable. And then two, there's a lot of these guys that they can, I'm right-handed. And so I'm setting up most of the time where I'm just trying to be able to basically be in position and shoot everything to my left and kind of give up my right. There, I know a lot of guys that they're able to turn around and shoot both ways. For me, it's one, getting away with that much movement when I have a deer there that close
Yeah.
is really difficult. And two, so far I haven't been able to get it where I feel confident enough in my shooting, unless it was like 20 or under, to take that shot, just because your footing isn't as good and you're having to adjust that tether, where it's allowing you to spin all the way around.
Huh.
So I'm
Interesting.
trying to
Yeah,
put myself in situations where they're coming to my left. That's what I'm trying to do.
I got cramped up the first time I ever used it. I was just trying to. I wasn't going to shoot this buck, but I was just trying to like practice getting in position on it. And man, I cramped up so bad trying to maneuver my body around that tree. But I feel like I'm 6'6", 250 pounds, and time you put my day pack up there to bow, I must look like Sasquatch sitting in a tree.
Were
But
you getting picked off a bunch?
yeah, it was. I was getting picked off big time. And
Yeah.
this sucks.
Were those mostly cottonwoods?
Yeah, cottonwoods with some, I don't even know what those little other scrub trees are I was in, but they were just
Okay.
gnarly. I know that.
Yeah. Those types of trees, man, I
Yeah.
hate cottonwoods. They're too big.
I'm not a big whitetail expert though. I've killed, you know, three or four pretty nice bucks, but all at the expertise of somebody else pretty much. So
Right?
Montana is actually the greatest place in the world to hunt whitetails. I think they're stupid. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, nobody, the place we were hunting, they just don't get hunted a lot. So you just watch them for a night or two, and then just both of them I killed up there. I, we just watched them come out of a corner and just popped a tree stand up that afternoon and killed them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, especially with alfalfa out
Yeah,
there. You know, it's
yeah,
the only kind of crop around and the only thing that is good vegetation. And so
right.
it's a slam dunk to get them patterned on that alfalfa.
Yeah, cool.
I get this question a lot. How important are my stabilizers? Well, stabilizers probably one of the most important things on my bow. Its job is to control the motion before, during, and after the shot. That helps us hold steady. It helps hold the bow still while the bow is loading and unloading from full draw to static. And it also controls the bow against our mistakes, so it makes it more forgiving. With Bee Stinger, you get a lightweight, high modulus bar with vibration dampening built into the bar. This is very critical in terms of getting the most out of your stabilization system. If you want to learn more, check out beestinger.com.
The question two I had for you is I was reading through some of your stuff on your guys' website, and it seems like you're pretty big into, scrapes. And that's a subject that's always kind of interested me because I'd hunted with a guy, good friend of mine. He's actually out. He sent me a picture. He's a guy I used to shoot competitive 3D with, and he's older now, so he's hunting with a crossbow. And he's killed some really nice bucks. And he sent me a picture of a well over 200-inch deer the other day he's after. But I remember hunting with him one time, and we put a tree stand up, and there was a scrape right below it, and I just was not ready for the action. I mean, I was kind of a rookie, I didn't know what I could get away with it. You know,
Right.
it was funny that I've always been kind of a long range shooter, and a mule deer, it'll sit there and take it like a champ. And I remember I was trying to shoot a doe first. First one I shot was like close to 70 yards. It was like 2 body lengths away by the time the arrow got there. This is Oklahoma. I swear,
Yeah.
I swear those deer on crack cocaine down there. But
Yeah.
the second one was, I think it was around 38 or 40 and ducked the arrow again. I'm like, good Lord.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Whitetails move on you.
And that's, honestly, that's one of the reasons I use the setup that I do for arrows. Are you familiar with a thorn broadhead?
I've heard of them. Yeah.
So thorn flies completely closed. So it
Okay.
allows me to run a really small fletching because I have a friend in South Africa. Well, he's not in South Africa anymore. He's Steve Cobreen is the guy's name. And I'm going to bring him on this podcast eventually because the guy, I'd like to bring him on for a full series. This guy is like the quintessential British explorer. And I mean, the guy's killed more SCI world records in more places than you could shake a stick at. Just the stories this guy has is just, it would just be amazing to share with everybody.
Right.
Just all the adventures. I mean, he talks about walking around in the jungle at full ready to shoot some little pygmy antelope
Right.
for 10 hours at a time.
10
And
hours.
yeah, because you're going to get a shot. It's going to be like that. Yeah,
That's
just the stuff the guy, it's just very, very unique. I
yeah.
had on this podcast, Pedro Ampuero, he's from Spain, and he's done some really cool stuff too. A lot of ibex, and he's hunted those big argali sheep and stuff, and
Yes.
the
I think
different.
does he make some videos?
Yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah, he's got some cool videos. I've seen some
yeah,
of
he
those.
does. He does. We'll have him on again too because he's got a lot of cool stuff. He's
Yeah, his hunts are way out of the norm. I liked watching his stuff.
Yeah, that's always what always intrigued me. But I'm 54 now, and that stuff's starting to take its toll. I
Yeah.
try to do adventure hunts. We did a caribou hunt last year. That was a lot of fun, but I guess we're getting off subject a little bit. But back on scrapes. So you guys, people talk about building, mock scrapes or existing scrapes. Explain to me and every other ignorant guy out west here doesn't know anything about whitetails. What? How do you hunt scrapes, and what's the advantage of using the existing scrape or building, a A mock
Mock
scrape.
scrape. Yeah, so scrapes are basically a communication method for whitetails.
Okay.
So obviously, whitetails don't do like you and I are, right? They don't go up to each other and say, "Hey, Tim, how are you?"
Right.
They utilize their glands, right? So they have forehead gland, their preorbital gland, interdigital gland. So like when a doe stomps at you, right? You see a doe stomping, it seems as though that's kind of just a meaningless act of she's perturbed, right? Because what she's actually doing is the interdigital gland in between her hooves is she's putting that scent into the ground, which tells other deer that there's danger there. So if you've ever had a deer stomp at you and then you had a deer come later and stand in that same place and then freak out and you couldn't figure out why, it's because they'd actually put that interdigital scent on the ground, and so then that deer knew there was danger there. So
Oh,
when they yeah, it's pretty intricate actually with how they communicate. So a scrape is the exact same thing, right? So is what they're doing is they're putting their preorbital gland, which is right, below their eye, on those sticks. They're basically letting deer know that they're in that area. Does will hit scrapes all the time, but they'll also hit them, especially when they're in heat, and letting the bucks in the area know that they're now in heat, right? So those scrapes can be a super beneficial way to one, figure out what deer are in your area. Because one of the first things that a new buck will do when he comes into an area is go hit a scrape, right? Especially
okay.
if he's going to be a dominant buck. He's going to let everybody know, hey, Big Charlie's in town. You guys better watch out. And that really communicates to those other deer around that there's a new guy in town. And so those scrapes, we've learned the thing that's great about them is the Midwest isn't quite as easy to pattern deer as it is out west, right? Like Montana, those deer, you can almost get those deer down to the minute, right?
Right.
Now you could do the same thing here if our tags or if our season, excuse me, opened in September, but it doesn't. It doesn't open until October. So those deer get out of velvet, they get off their summer patterns, and they start getting a little bit more erratic. And then here we have quite a bit more timber than some of those places out west. So getting some kind of pattern and consistency to these deer gets really difficult. And so they'll hit scrapes and communicate like that year round, but they'll really, really start hitting them as the rut gets closer because they're establishing these territories, establishing dominance, and communicating with these other deer. And so if you can be finding a buck that's hitting one of those scrapes during daylight hours, anytime before November 1, really, the chances of him doing that again and being consistent is really, really good. So it's
Okay.
a simple way to it's a simple way to be able to get a deer to do something reliably more than once. So that to me is the biggest advantage of it, to not only find a deer, but actually to be able to kill one. Now you
Right.
can't, if you're going to go and put you're going to go and put a scrape on the edge of a field, that may not help you that much as far as actually killing one. It may give you great inventory, but that doesn't mean that that deer is going to be getting there during daylight hours.
That was
So
my next question going to be is like what you see lots of pictures online of deer hitting scrapes at night, but
yes,
what percentage is it based on? Big animals in general just tend to want to stick to cover till daylight, till
absolutely.
during daylight hours. But
Yeah, scrapes on a field to me is personally is pretty much useless unless it's strictly for inventory. If I'm trying to kill a deer over a scrape, I want it to be in the timber near his bedding area.
okay,
And so that's where it gets a little bit dicey, right? Because in order to find those scrapes, you have to be in those areas as well. So at that point is what I'm doing on most of these places. It comes from postseason scouting that I'm doing during shed season, walking around, doing looking for antlers and really just scouting and finding those scrapes that a lot of times they'll open those up year after year. And then I know that it's there. And then if I can put a camera in there, if I can get one, I killed a really large 8-year-old deer a few years ago, and I killed him over a scrape. And so I got one picture of him on like October 11th or 14th or something like that. And that was all I needed to know that he was back into that area. And I
hmm,
sat there 4 times and I killed him on the fourth time.
awesome.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it can be.
that's cool. Yeah, I mean, are sometimes are they on road systems inside the woods or trail systems, or is that typically where you find them? Or
Yeah, anywhere that's going to be a high traffic area,
Okay.
and then like your rubs. There's a common misconception with your rubs typically, right? So you'll see a really big rub in a bedding area, and people will tell you, "Oh, there's a big buck bedding here." Well, that could be true. He could be constantly hitting one tree and bedding in that same spot. But more than likely, is what it is there's numerous bucks that are going through that same location, and they're all hitting that same tree,
Yeah.
right? Because that's another communication method for them. So that's something that we've learned. We used to think the same thing, that it's only one buck, and that's
Yeah.
his area.
I would bet trail cameras have changed people's perception on a lot of things. You get to see a lot of things you normally wouldn't have. I've owned a few of them, but honestly, I've never like lived in a place where it was very conducive to actually run them that much, and but I know everybody out east just eats, sleeps, and breathes by them, and I understand why. I mean, it makes sense, but they banned them
Oh,
here because some of the outfitters just frankly are out of control with them, you know.
right. Yeah,
So
it's well, and your cell camps now have really changed that game because
yeah,
it's you're getting live information, you're getting real
yeah,
time information that has made a big difference in the amount of deer that get killed, I think.
yeah. I think it's getting to the point where it's like even like the muzzle loaders and rifles, getting technology is getting a little bit, is pulling some of the ethics out of it, and some of
Yeah,
the to me some of the fun of hunting is not knowing what's over there, going to a new.
absolutely.
But whitetail hunting's different that way. I think it's totally different in regards to most people are hunting a piece of property that they're used to. Um, I mean, I think that becomes the big challenge when we get into our next topic, is introducing kids and non-hunters into the outdoor lifestyle. I mean, how do you do it? I mean, when there's so much private land, most public land has got so much people on it. How do you take a kid out like we did when we were growing up? The whole family would just truck up to Grays River in Wyoming and we'd hunt for a week, and that's just hard to do anymore because it's not that easy for everybody to get a tag. And I think that is like my podcast with Michael Waddell is, I mean, he claimed that, or stated that one of the biggest fun things about hunting is the personal interaction you have with people in hunting. I mean, that's what's fun. I told him a story where I went on a Dall sheep hunt by myself, and it was like the most miserable experience of my life. It was like it was not fun, and
Oh
you got to have somebody to share it with, and that's life in general. I think so
yeah,
what, especially like Iowa. You look at, I mean, Iowa. A lot of people go to Iowa. I know several of my friends have moved to Iowa just for the whitetail hunting.
yeah.
And my cousin actually lives out there. She killed a 196-inch buck last year. She's an animal. Her
That's a
husband
big
is a little guiding too, I think. But yeah, she's always been ate up with hunting.
right. Good for her. That's a giant,
Oh, it's a heck of a buck. I told her it was a drop time buck. I said, your drop time has a cheater.
right?
So yeah, it was a hell of a buck. Yeah. I don't know if I had a picture of it. I think it's in our catalog. Yeah, there it is. There, check that out. Here, you can see it.
Man, that mass is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a heck of a deer. They get some big ones over
Uh,
there. She showed me some sheds that are just crazy, man. It's like, but
in, in Iowa deer.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah. I think that's a really interesting question. I think that's kind of a tough one to answer because it is, as far as, here in Iowa, there's not that much public ground to begin with.
Right.
And I think when you're introducing new people, the benefit of going with somebody is that typically you're going to be able to give them a little bit more of a natural experience, meaning they're going to get to see deer, they're going to get to see how they act normally. Where public, it's just like I tell people that want to go out west on their first elk hunt.
Oh, I know. People have a big
They all,
misconception. Yeah.
yeah, they all say, "Oh, I want to go do it myself, and I want to do public land over the counter, all this." And I'm like, well, if you're trying to learn, you couldn't give yourself a worse situation to do that
Yeah,
because
it's tough.
you're taking the most difficult elk in the most difficult places, and you're trying to learn how to hunt elk. I would tell you you'd be way better off going with an outfitter or somebody who knows what they're doing first and learning before
Right.
you go and try to trek into that, or be dedicated enough to know that it's going to take you a few years to figure it out.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
one of the big misconceptions for people coming from east to west is they always go opening day.
yeah,
And I would, whenever I hunted like I do, I would never. You can have the first two. My friend Kyle Douglas says he prefers that. I just don't. I'd rather locate them. They'd be herded up a little bit more. The rut activity is a lot higher. Like my hunt ended to the 19th. I mean, they were just you'd cow call to an elk and they'd shut up. It was crazy.
right.
And
Yeah, I
you
know a
see,
lot of people that like that first week of October.
yeah, it seems to be like places like Arizona and stuff. Even southern Utah. I think that first week October is it's almost like the rut just is slowly backing up a little bit,
Yeah, but
But
maybe it is with the weather. The weather patterns changing the way they are.
right, yeah, who
So
knows?
yeah. But I think, and so here in the Midwest, you have a lot of private ground, and then you have a lot of ground that's bought strictly for deer and leased, same thing. But I would say if somebody's dedicated, this could be difficult for a new hunter, but if somebody's dedicated, you can still get permission on them in the Midwest. You can still knock on doors and get permission. It's
Okay,
not like it was, I think, 20, 30 years ago when my dad was younger and he was going and knocking on doors. You can't just go and knock on somebody's door anymore and get a yes, right? You got to come up with different ways to build a relationship with them
sure,
or find where those landowners are hanging out to be able to build some of a relationship with them and
right,
then ask them to hunt, try and at first help them out with something, but you can absolutely still get permission here in the Midwest.
right. It just I look at people like my daughter's boyfriend, for example. He made the comment to me the other day. He says, I feel like bow hunting or hunting is something that you know you have to be taught by somebody that knows. It's not something that's easy just to go out and do it. You know, I was at my one of my buddies' weddings last weekend, and his wife's mother was talking about her daughter, and she said this girl just had the desire to learn how to hunt and to fish, and so she reached out to some of the outdoor people to help her with the fishing part of it, and then she went and worked for an outfitter. I mean, that's pretty out of the norm. She worked for an outfitter up in Northwest Territories or something as a packer.
Really?
That's you don't find that kind of desire in most people, but
No.
I think I was talking to Ted Nugent last week on a podcast, and we were talking about the fact that if you want to change numbers, and people like I say this to people all the time, even at archery tournaments, like if you want more people to do this, it's a very simple concept. If every single person here brought a person with them, your numbers double. Okay.
Yep.
And people are not going to go out of their way. I mean, you can stoke the fire. Once the fire is lit, I mean, people will do whatever. I mean, it's crazy what parents will spend for their kids to shoot a sport or, and I think, and I've always said that if our hunting will get behind competitive shooting, whether you have you competitively shot at all? I mean,
I've entered some tournaments and stuff, but not like seriously,
yeah,
try to compete.
right. But you got a little background in
Yeah, I go to 3D shoots every year. Yep.
okay. So I mean, that's a good way for people to really get their skill sets up too. But I've always said that if we just grow that side of the sport, those people won't necessarily all hunt, but they'll when it comes time to make a vote on it, when it comes time to I run into people all the time in my travels. I travel a lot. That when they hear that I shoot archery or something, they're very intrigued by it. I think the majority of people are very intrigued with the activity, but they also have a stereotype of who they think a hunter is and
Yep.
what type of person a hunter is. And I think one of the big benefits of competitive archery is that it introduces people that aren't necessarily hunters to people that are hunters. It tends to break down that stereotype when it comes time for them to, when they're in a conversation with their non-hunting friends or it's time to vote on a particular, you know, piece of legislation or act, that is pro or con bow hunting, I think we stand a much better chance to have support, if we have a very big, competitive archery scene also.
Yeah. I think that there's a really simple, easy solution to it if you wanted to increase the hunter numbers. And I think that is what, if you made it where it was a system where each person went to introduce somebody to hunting, you got to incentivize them. I would love to say that everybody would do it out of the goodness of their heart, and that's just not true. You got to incentivize them. And I think there's a super easy way that the states could do that. If you made a deal here in Iowa where, the only way to get entered into hunting this state park or this place where nobody else could hunt is you had to mentor somebody each year, you'd have more new hunters than you know what to do with. Think of the West. I mean, I'm sure you guys had units where if the only way to get into that unit would be to have to take somebody to get entered.
We have this program called Dedicated Hunter. And the problem we run into out here is there's not enough wildlife to go around for the number of people that hunt, right? So
right.
you want to hunt. So the Dedicated Hunter does is you have to put in a certain amount of work hours with the Game and Fish Department, and they have projects like they'll build, they'll put, water catch systems out in the desert, or they'll work on a variety of different tree removal projects or things like that. And, but you have to do a certain amount of hours, then you're guaranteed a tag 2 out of those 3 years.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people do that. Yeah. I mean, incentive drives everything. I've always said that. Absolutely. But,
yeah. I think it's an interesting place where it's at right now, though, because it definitely seems to be trending upwards as well as far as total hunter numbers.
Yeah. I mean, I used to go to Idaho, buy a tag over the counter for elk. And if I killed one early, I go buy another tag because they were left over. Now they sell out in 25 minutes. You can't even get a tag. It's just because the internet's kind of just spread everything around where people feel like they can go out and do it. You got some of the TV shows and online guys going out west, and they've made it seem doable for other people. So, and it's tough. I'm with you. I grew up in Wyoming. I honestly never killed an elk with a bow until I think I was 19 or 20. I joined the Army, went to Alaska, and when I came home in 1997, I didn't kill my first elk with a bow until 04. It was crazy. I mean, I had hunted a lot, but
there's just a lot more access to information nowadays.
Yeah.
You be able to find everything online in a YouTube video on articles. It's much more simple to figure out the rules, the laws, the regulations. Where I think probably even 10 years ago, still there was a lack of data that made it easy for people to go out west. I think that's why you saw so many people in Colorado.
Yeah, Colorado's tough too, because I went over there and hunted with Aaron Snyder one time. And I was all excited. We went high country, and Aaron's got a pretty big reputation. I call him all the time, when I have high country. If you should watch our podcast we did together. It's pretty entertaining usually, but he's an expert in backcountry hunting, and I would never want to live in a tent as much as he does. But whenever I have a question, and there's certain way. I look back over the years and how I hunted Idaho before and how I would do it again in the future. It's two different animals, and it's just tough. And I'm just getting to the age where I don't know if I really want to do that anymore. It's just, I'd rather save my dollars and pay for, try to get a tag in Arizona or up in Montana or something that's a little bit more, laid back.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. But I'm on both sides. I like sometimes, especially with camera guys, it's a lot easier to be able to have a lodge or something. But at the same time, those backcountry hunts too, they seem to provide the best stories.
Oh, there is, man. I mean, we had one of the coolest things that happened to us this year. We decided we were going to spike camp into this ridge because it was just too much to go in and out of this place. And we had put I mean, we had gotten over there and we just got into our little camp, which is under this tree boughs. And we kind of dug in underneath this tree, and we were right in the saddle where a lot of them were crossing and stuff. And it just gotten dark, and I'm just sitting there on my little mat, and I got a bivy sack, and I'm just firing up the stove to cook something. I mean, this elk, he bugled like I swear to God, he was on the other side of the pine boughs. I mean, it sounded like he was 5 yards away. Scared the living crap out of me, but I'll always remember that too. It's just it's cool to lay out there in the middle of them at night, just screaming all around you. It's a pretty intense feeling. It's something that you just can't explain to people that have never you know experienced it. So
Yeah.
we had a
It's,
lot of good times on the hunt. Didn't kill anything, but man, it was still at the end of the hunt. I don't know that I've ever been in a situation where I've hunted that hard and just felt like I was okay with not getting anything.
right. Yeah.
And I wouldn't, like you said, you guys are hunting does. I'd encourage my first animal with a bow was a doe. I mean, I would encourage people to, if you want to try elk hunt, another way of getting into it is out here in Utah, for example. You can go out in these premium units and you can hunt cows and spikes with a bow. So you get a chance to be around a lot of elk and
Yeah.
take a cow home, and they're good eating. It's still a heck of a lot of fun to stick an arrow through a big old fat cow too. So
Oh yeah, I've shot several cows. Anything that can give you experience and help give you knowledge on units, on the animals you're hunting, anything like that, I think it's going to be beneficial for you majorly
yeah, it's
when you do drop the tag or just in your progression as a hunter.
yeah. If your first elk you ever see behind your pin sight is a 350 bull, you're probably gonna have a
You might
hard
lose your lunch.
yeah, you're gonna
Yeah,
have a hard time handling that probably. So
yep. And where's the fun in that? You got to have something to work up towards.
some people get lucky, and then they have to try to live up to that the rest of their life.
Right. Yeah, I'd rather start lower and work my way up.
Yeah, I pretty much have to learn everything the hard way. I swear. I just got back from an air rifle tournament, and I thought I had it all figured out, and back to square
Yeah.
one.
Right.
Not square one. I think I've got up to about square 7 or 8 now, and it's just like, but it's amazing. I'm at the top of the archery game, but it's like, and you realize how long that took me. I tell people all the time they want success like that. It took me 20 years to win my first pro tournament, and I think about that all the time. And I remember hearing people talking behind my back when I won that first one, and they were like, "Oh, I just got lucky." And I thought, you guys have no idea the mountain I just climbed. You have no
Right.
idea. And I think I went for almost 7 or 8 tournaments. If I made the shoot off, I won the tournament. It was just,
How many have you won now?
oh, I don't even keep track. That just keeps you down.
Good for you. That's
I just
awesome.
I just go to every tournament. I go to every target trying to make the best shot. And I think if you compartmentalize it that way, if you sit here and worry about, some of these guys have a body count of how many animals they kill. I don't care. Makes no
Right.
difference. I mean, it's just kind of egotistical in a certain sense to, I don't know. I don't care. It doesn't matter. What matters is the next one. And
Yeah.
then
Do you
as I
think
get older, what matters is me leaving what I've learned to the next generation. How am I gonna leave what I know to empower people to enjoy the sport of archery? Because even in 2024, there's a lot of archery and bow hunting has a lot of ignorance in it. There's not been a very good source of learning, and pro shops are becoming less and less. They just can't make it with all the online sales and stuff. And
Yeah.
so there's a real need to educate people online. And I think we're going to kind of wrap it up with this. And I would encourage, I appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your knowledge. People can go to your guys' website. Is it raisehunting.com?
Yep. Just racehunting.com.
Raisehunting.com. They've got some of their products and tips and tricks on there. You can go to Gold Tips website and YouTube channel. There's lots of technical videos on there on building arrows, tuning. I'd encourage people to get on there and learn. I mean, I like to learn. I mean, I like, no matter what I'm doing, I like to be better at it. And
Let me ask you one question before
sure,
we sign off. If you had to compare the two, a shot to win a tournament and a shot on a big bull, which one is more difficult or rattles you more?
tournament.
Tournament?
It just depends. Every situation's different, I guess. The problem with hunting is almost seems like you're rushed the entire time. You know, there are those times, probably the most, like I shot two caribou last year. Both of them didn't have a clue I was there. I mean, to me, that's the epitome of bow hunting. It gives you the time to calm down, to move your sight rather than make a hurried range judge fast go. You know, it just depends. I mean, I feel like tournaments give me the confidence that when I see 65 in my rangefinder, there's not even a thought in my mind that I'm going to miss. I've done them.
Right.
Okay. Tournament archery has taught me how to prepare. Okay. From that standpoint, that being said, in 13 days, I never got a chance to execute that shot. So,
Yeah.
um, when I see people, building their equipment setups based off of certain criteria, I want to chide them a little bit. And one of the things I'm going to do after we get off with you here is we have a segment called Hammers Hacks. I mean, Hammer's kind of my nickname in archery. Um, it's a long story where it came from, but one of the things I'm going to talk about is like simple thing like a sight setup. A lot of people want to shoot a one pin sight, but it's more accurate, yes, marginally, but it's not as practical. So you have to, in a hunting situation, become more practical. Where in a tournament situation, I'm specialized in building that setup to be the most competitive possible. Okay, so there's just a lot of it depends on the type of archery too. I mean, if it's indoor is a miserable game for me. I'm a little bit too high strung and a little too high type A for it, and it's kind of the game I always tell everybody it's the equivalent of telling a golfer if he misses a 4-foot putt, he's got to play for 4 days, but there's no way possible he can win. And that doesn't fit my personality very well, or most people that have any type of high strung personality. Making a shot hunting is probably the easiest thing I do in my archery career.
Really?
Taking the hardest thing that I have hunting, the number one problem in hunting with a bow is the distance. Do you have time to get the range? Up close is not a big deal. You can be 3 or 4 yards off, doesn't matter. I got on a giant mule deer last year, 35-inch buck, and popped over the ridge at him. And I went to range him and I was trying to stay low enough and it kept hitting the grass, right? And finally I was like, I'm busted. I thought the deer was alone.
Yeah.
I didn't know he had does with him. And if I'd have known that, I would have taken a little bit more risk at the yardage. But I decided to judge it. And I mean, I'm one of the best yardage judgers in the country, but it's different, right? People don't understand that yardage judging in a tournament 3D scenario it's a recall memory thing. I got 140 3D targets in my backyard. What I'm doing is remembering, but because it's a hunting situation where I have never seen that deer in that size, you can get close, but it's not that instant. I've seen that 100 times, right?
Yeah.
And if you practice that stuff hunting, you'll see that it's just probably the biggest innovation for bow hunting has been the laser rangefinder. I mean, it's just, but then again, it's still in the bow hunting situation. It's still the biggest challenge because it takes time to do that. And if you're going to, if I got a guy over my shoulder telling me the range, I mean, I can make about any shot there is out to 100 yards. But when
Right.
you have to make the range, the adjustment, the shot, that takes time and movement. And that's probably the hardest thing in archery hunting to pull off. Being in a stand or being in a blind definitely makes that easier. But a lot of times there's just this short window, that you have. And if you can't make that shot, I mean, I had a shot like that at about 50 yards on that last elk, and I had no doubt in my mind I could put an arrow right through it, and just needed a second.
Well, yeah. That's all it can come down to in bow hunting, though, is 1 second.
Yeah, that's all it is. So I guess with that, we'll kind of log off here. I appreciate having you on. I encourage you guys to help us spread the word. I think we got a lot of good conversations, to come in the Archery Ops podcast. And I look forward to the rest of the hunting season. What do you got planned for the rest of the year?
Mostly whitetails.
Just
Whitetails now. Yep, will take over everything. I went to Colorado and hunted mule deer, and then was in New Mexico with the Primos boys a few weeks ago. And so now it'll be whitetails pretty much here on out.
How'd it go the first two?
The first one went pretty well. It was a learning experience.
Yeah.
We were at about 13,000 feet, and yeah, that was really the only place that I was finding any deer. But we did get close, and I missed about 150-inch mule deer, which really, really sucked. That was the first deer I missed in a long, long time. And of course it was.
Yeah, let me give you a little tip on that. So one of the things that people need to take into consideration is elevation. If you don't take a target with you, this Pedro Ampuero called me and he was all bent out of shape because he missed this giant Argali sheep, and God only knows what he paid for that hunt, and it was a tough shot. It was over 100 yards, and I was giving him all the parameters. I was up in elk camp, so I live at 4,500 feet. Elk camp was at 9,000, 9,500. And I hadn't really shot my bow at elevation. I'd done some tests in the past. And so the third or fourth afternoon, I went out and put a target up. And oh my God, I was hitting like 12 inches high at 100.
Right.
So I had to get my, sight tapes out and re-sight the bow in. And that's one of the things that, is very important, that if you go on a hunt like to Alaska or something, you need to have access to a target, and you need to take sight tapes and the ability to re-sight in when you get there, because air density levels at different distances. Now, if you're only shooting 20 or 30 or 40 yards, it isn't going to matter enough to make a difference, right? But as you extend those distances out and you go to high elevation like that with thin air, if you're planning on taking longer shots, especially for like mule deer, you better be prepared for them.
Right. Yeah. It was a learning experience. It was a lot of fun. And then New Mexico was great. It was a great time with those guys. And my little brother killed his first bull.
Awesome.
So it was a lot of fun.
Well, good deal. Well, we better wrap it up. Good luck hunting. I got one hunt left in Africa, a big one I'm pretty excited about going on. So we're doing
awesome
spot and stock kudu Nile, a bush buck, and I'm going to kill these little things called a mountain reed buck because they remind me of a coos deer.
Right.
I'd shot at one, the one trip I was in Africa, and it was just a really unique animal. And I remember being at full draw at, I think it was 96 yards. And I said to the guide, I'm like, do you think he's going to jump? And he's pissing. And I'm like, maybe not. That sucker he wasn't even close to that arrow when it got there.
Right.
I mean, it was crazy how fast he was. I mean, I was just like, wow. So I might have to build a specific setup just to hunt that's a little more quieter. So,
right.
But
yeah, well, good luck. That'll be fun.
Good luck the rest of the fall, and appreciate having you on. And we're going to sign out.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll see you.
Hey, before you go, there's a great way to get even more info and tips. Follow this podcast and check out Gold Tip on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Thanks for listening. And as always, start tough and stay true.